G'day folks, it's Nathan here, FVR 375 on the channel, and also in my capacity as the Shooters Union Australia Professional Shooting Representative. Welcome to Suppressor Update, or Suppressors in Queensland update number 11. It's been a couple of months since update number 10, and there's a couple of things to talk about. So first things first, obviously it's night time. I'm up in far north Queensland at the moment on a conservation-based program conducting shooting work. So I just thought I'd talk to a couple of things that are relevant to what we're talking about with suppressors at the moment. So as a professional shooter in Queensland, unlike other states, I can't have suppressors or a valid engineering solution to go on the end of my firearm to reduce noise. And as such, at the moment, reality land for me is I've got pretty bad tinnitus. I've got a lot of ringing in my ears. And my hearing is in decline as a direct result of the work that I undertake. Now, that's not to say that I don't do everything within my power currently to mitigate the issues surrounding hearing loss. So when I'm conducting aerial shooting operations, I'm wearing top of the range noise cancelling headsets inside professional shooting helmets. Up here in the field at the moment, we're doing pest control. So here's one of the firearms that I'm using, which is a wedge-tail rifle WT-15. You can see there it's got a muzzle brake on it, and if I was able to fit this firearm with a suppressor, I wouldn't need hearing protection at all. The best I've got at the moment is what they call a blast jacket, which screws on over the top. So it's nothing like a suppressor, it's just a hollow tube basically, and that's the limited capacity that I have from an engineering point of view to limit any hearing loss or other issues that I may face as a result of my professional shooting activities. On top of that, in the field, I've got active hearing protection, which is worn at all times, so it enables me to retain a degree of situational awareness in terms of being able to listen to my environment. And from a risk management perspective, that's pretty important in my field. I need to be able to understand what's happening around me, any other vehicles on site, that type of thing for the type of work that we're undertaking. So, risk management is a big deal, and obviously personal risk and the risk to my employees of hearing damage through applying the correct PPE and engineering solutions where they're available. Obviously, it's a big part of why I'm so passionate about getting suppressors into Queensland for those that use them regularly from an occupational point of view at this stage. So, just to talk a little bit more about that, my company is a pest control company in the conservation and land management space. So I use firearms routinely, regularly, and at a high volume. And again, I just don't have capacity to provide a solution that will protect my hearing and the hearing of my employees. And so that's where we're coming from with this. What's interesting though is that as a company director, or as many of the other businesses that are out there in the world, we are fully obligated under WHS legislation to protect the hearing of our employees by not exposing them to industrial levels of noise. As recently as last week, Worksafe Queensland have just started a PR campaign about the new audiometric testing requirements, which now require all companies where there's a relevant level of exposure to conduct audiometric testing for our employees. So we're saying on one hand, from a Worksafe Queensland point of view, that it's a very important issue that we have to have tested to see if there's any degradation. And on the other hand, we're not supporting or enabling or assisting in any way, shape or form, or even indeed responding to the very significant number of applications that have been made to the requirement to provide an engineering solution to firearms noise. And instead choosing to hide behind legislation and advice that they've received from other agencies. So from my perspective as a company director who is professionally required and legally required and morally required to conduct those things, I've got a pretty significant issue with how that's been handled to date. Just to follow up on that, I'll just put up a screenshot now so you can see the social media release that Worksafe Queensland put up relating to audiometric testing. So you can see it doesn't really make sense in terms of the approach and the importance being placed on hearing versus where they're at in terms of supporting this particular issue, which when you're talking about firearms occupational users is really the only way you can fundamentally prevent any significant hearing loss and other degradation such as tinnitus occurring to those users. So the other thing I want to talk about as we're getting into this update, and I'm just going to put it up on the screen now. So what you can see there is a letter from the Deputy Premier of Queensland Labor, Cameron Dick, who is articulating Labor's intent should they be re-elected at the state election in 2024 with a number of firearms considerations in that letter. You know, they have clearly indicated they are going to undertake a 12-month trial of occupational use of suppressors. So not maybe going to trial it, not considering it, not going to conduct further liaison. They were going to conduct the trial, full stop. So, you know, basically where we got to last year, there was a significant amount of effort put in by a range of people, including a very good demonstration conducted by the Queensland Police Service on the use of suppressors, which again, unfortunately, they didn't invite any external stakeholders. They just kept it to internal stakeholders and the Ag Minister and the Police Minister. But at the end of the day, a demonstration was conducted. It was a good activity. It was a fair representation of the capabilities of suppressors. And those politicians walked away from that activity with a resounding sense of the fact that suppressors don't present a public safety risk, are a useful tool, and indeed are a requirement for workplace health and safety with occupational users of firearms in Queensland, noting that in most other states in Australia that's already the case. Anyway, so committed were they that they put that in writing and then sent that out to a number of industry stakeholders. So pretty clearly, you know, supporting the concept there. And yet here we are in 2025 under an LNP government in Queensland who have previously also indicated a level of support for bringing in suppressors in Queensland for occupational users. And yet here we are right now, effectively no further down the line and being pushed in a direction where we're going to have to take legal action, which is not something we particularly wanted to do to get this issue resolved. But at the end of the day, given the significant legal implications that are implied on Queensland businesses under workplace health and safety legislation, we need to do something about this issue. And all of the activities that we've undertaken to date in terms of significant liaison with Worksafe Queensland, a significant amount of effort placed through political means, you know, the demonstrations, all of the letter writing, all of the correspondence, all of the liaison, the great work that's been done by AgForce to support primary producers out there and highlight the issue. And ultimately right now, we're no further down the line. So that's basically where we're at in terms of moving forwards. There is going to be a fair bit more information coming out of that in the not too distant future. However, I'm not going to go into detail in this video on those specific actions. So if you're anything like me, you're probably sitting there wondering what actually is the impediment currently with the current Queensland government as to why they have not moved forwards on bringing in suppressors or a suppressor trial for occupational users of firearms in Queensland. And again, just highlighting the fact that that's in vogue in most other states in Australia. So it's a, you know, it's a soft change, it's a simple change to the regulations only to enable that to occur. The facts are, and the words that have been provided from multiple sources, is that a senior Queensland police officer has indicated that they have a public safety concern around the fact that if suppressors are available in Queensland, then there is an increased risk of not being able to triangulate the position of an active shooter or a sniper in a mass casualty criminal style event, so a mass shooting essentially. Look, from my perspective, that is pretty ridiculous. And if that's what we're hanging our hat on from a public safety point of view, we're having a pretty significant fail in the common sense space. So a couple of factors with that. Number one, you know, the individuals that are talking, and I'm talking about that senior police officer, wherever they may be, they don't have a significant background in firearms, ballistics or suppressor use, and most certainly not qualified to be making those judgments around the risk that suppressors represent in that space. Secondly, as I've said a number of times already in this video, suppressors have been available throughout Australia for a number of years in a number of states under a permit system of various sorts for use by professional users. And there's some states and territories in Australia that are softening on that approach as well, and potentially looking at recreational users of firearms being able to use suppressors as well. The fact that they've been out there legally in Australia for years, and to the point where up until recently even New South Wales, Worksafe was offering rebates for people who bought suppressors, you know, is a fairly solid indication that that risk has been well and truly overstated and really doesn't exist. You know, the public safety issue is frankly rubbish with suppressors. They don't represent any public safety issue whatsoever. If they did, the risks that are out there would have happened already, and they simply haven't. Not only that, so the average criminal in Australia, and again, I'm no criminal expert here, but from my perspective, the average criminal in Australia doesn't bother with the firearms licensing system. So whatever state those criminals happen to be in, they don't particularly find themselves getting a weapons license, going through all of the rigmarole that a law-abiding firearms user has to do. And then indeed for any higher category of firearm or contrivance that goes on the front of a firearm, you know, going through the laborious process of additional checks and balances to get the permit in place, to get a suppressor, to then go and commit a crime. Not only that, I would highlight that there is actually 0 cases of suppressor usage in a mass casualty event in Australia. It just doesn't exist. So, you know, and it's a very rare thing in any other location. And I would dare say that, you know, there's a number of other occurrences that have occurred where, suppressor or not, the outcome's the same. You know, because suppressors don't do what they do in Hollywood. The shot is still very clearly audible, etc. when it comes down to that tactical level situation where you're trying to identify where it's occurring. So frankly, the public safety issue is rubbish. It's what's being put up to our politicians currently, you know, and it is not. There are a number of Queensland police out there in the service now who are supportive of bringing suppressors in because they recognise, you know, the utility of those items for those of us in the professional space. They do prevent, you know, and reduce firearms noise to make it to a safer level, so we're not alarming the public when we're conducting works in areas where gunshots can be heard. Therefore, we're not wasting police resources. You know, there are a number of positive benefits outside of straight WHS to suppressor usage in Australia. So again, hopefully for any government officials, ministers, whatever, whoever might find themselves watching this video, simply put, suppressors are not a public safety issue, you know, and criminals are not using a suppressor that's been provided under a permit system. In fact, they're not using suppressors at all. It actually makes their firearm easier to see, harder to conceal, and more unwieldy to use in a criminal scenario. So, you know, the reality is suppressors are just something that the criminal world is not really interested in. The only people who are genuinely interested in suppressors are those of us who are in the workplace trying to comply with government legislation and workplace health and safety to prevent injury to ourselves and our workers. You know, they're the people who are interested in suppressors for reasons that are clearly valid. Unfortunately in Australia, we seem to have this dynamic where our government agencies and government officials cannot seem to grasp the concept around firearms, that law-abiding firearms users are not the issue in Australia. In fact, every time you have an additional licensed firearms user, you get another member to the most scrutinised part of the population in Queensland and in Australia, because pretty much the licensing system is fairly similar across the states and territories. So you get people who are heavily vetted, who have had to go through all of the processes, all of the wait times, etc., and then have to comply with additional processes anytime they want to gain an additional firearm. You know, simply put, law-abiding firearms users are not contributing to the criminal issues with firearms in Australia. In actual fact, the toughening and tightening of those laws is actually directly contributing to an expanding black market around firearms, which is supporting criminals getting hold of firearms more and more easily. And you can certainly see that in the national news at the moment with a number of shootings that are occurring down in southern Australia. I can guarantee you that none of those firearms are registered firearms that have come from a law-abiding firearms source. You know, they are all black market illegal firearms. They've got nothing to do with law-abiding firearms owners, and it is purely a scare tactic used by government agencies and officials, because law-abiding firearms owners are very easy to target because we are licensed, we are registered, all of our details are known, there are no secrets, everyone knows exactly what you've got, you're required to store it a certain way, etc, etc. Anyhow, preaching to the converted there, but yeah, the law-abiding side of things is not the issue here. And again, it talks directly to the issue around suppressors, that where you have the correct categories of people who are using them occupationally under a permit system, which is very easy to institute, you're not increasing any risk to public safety whatsoever. There is only positive benefit to be gained. There is also a number of examples throughout the world, which I've talked about in previous videos, but I do like to bring them up because it paints a very clear picture. So New Zealand's just had one of the most significant firearms reforms they've ever had in terms of licensing, reducing access to certain types of firearms, etc, etc. And one of the issues that they did not change whatsoever, because it has no consequence in terms of public safety, is the availability of suppressors. So in New Zealand, you can pretty much just walk in and buy one over the counter. There's no permit system, there's no additional licensing, there's nothing like that. If you have a firearms license and you have firearms and you want to suppress it to make it a little bit quieter on your ears and not annoy neighbouring properties, etc., or scare livestock, or to conduct pest control more effectively, you can just go and buy a suppressor. It's fine, it's good to go. Again, nothing but positive benefit from that activity. And in actual fact, it is heavily encouraged over there to use a suppressor when you're shooting on private and public lands, because it obviously has so many benefits in terms of not annoying people when you're out there conducting either your recreational or pest control activities. So, you know, New Zealand is a great case study. Strong firearms laws, pretty low firearms crime, very similar to Australia, suppressors in place for the entire shooting population, and no issues. And yet in Queensland we seem to still be struggling with the fact that we think there's going to be a public safety issue when we bring it in, even though it's already in most other states in Australia. So it's quite farcical in terms of that. Now when you then extrapolate that to the potential for legal action to occur in the not too distant future, it's not very hard to understand that it's going to get supported, particularly when there's case studies from other countries and other states within Australia that directly say that there is no negative outcome to suppressor usage, and Queensland is going to look very silly for not having brought in something so common sense, so simple and so low risk to enhance the workplace health and safety of Queensland workers and ensure that companies and businesses in Queensland are able to apply WHS legislation correctly. So pretty simple stuff there. Obviously the UK is another great example. So they did have a permit system in place for the use of moderators, as they call them over there, but moderator, suppressor, same thing. They've abolished that because they realised it was a waste of time, there was no public safety risk, and again, UK is one of the most firearms adverse countries in the world, and they cannot find any issue with suppressors. Again, it's pretty simple stuff. So where we're at, as I said earlier, we have made pretty limited headway on the suppressor issue with the newly elected government. We gave them the courtesy of time to get their feet under the desk, to understand the problem, to go through what had been done under the previous government, etc, etc, hoping that some common sense would prevail. But that roadblock that exists senior to the Queensland Police Service still exists as illegitimately as it is, in terms of the very poor advice being provided that is just factually not accurate, and so we are no further down the line. So where is this going to go next? And look, I'm just going to put up again right now that document from the previous police minister. We're going to keep applying pressure to get suppressors available for occupational users in Queensland. Again, it's a soft change for the LNP government, and once that roadblock is removed in terms of that diatribe around public safety, we should be able to move forwards fairly quickly, and there's a couple of different mechanisms that will assist in doing that. So, there's still the opportunity at this point in time for the Queensland Government to see the common sense, avoid the drama, and just make the change, commence a trial, and then we'll all move forwards happy, and this issue will, generally speaking, go away for everyone. And all of those stakeholders that are involved to date will be fairly happy with that outcome. Look, if that's not where it goes, unfortunately that leaves the other recourse open, which is follow up and follow through through the legal processes which are being explored at the moment. So look, it's not really a course of action that anyone wants to do, but at this point in time, and given the significant processes that have been in place, literally every other avenue to have suppressors brought into Queensland to bring Queensland into line with other states has been undertaken. And unfortunately, we have not had common sense prevail. Even though we've had the other side of government agree to do it, the current side of government is still dealing with that roadblock at Queensland Police Service, and we are no further forward. So in the not too distant future, as I said earlier in the video, we will be looking at action that we can undertake. So in terms of what can you do to support the issue, at this point in time, it's probably more about waiting and watching to confirm how we're moving forwards. We may be seeking some support from the public and other occupational firearms users in the not too distant future as we commence action if we get to that point. And again, we're not talking on a long-term program here. This is something that we're going to get into very shortly. However, obviously, we are ensuring that all the processes are in place and that we have our information lined up correctly with the correct way to proceed from a legal perspective if we need to go down that pathway. So stay tuned. No doubt there will be another suppressor update in the not too distant future. We'll confirm what that approach is and we'll move forward on that front. So again, look, fairly long video, probably not an astounding amount of super positive news on the suppressor front there. But the reality is, for Queensland Government, this issue is not going away. Queensland is lagging behind the other states in Australia. They are being shaped by people who have specific single zealot issues around firearms, when the reality is firearms are a common and required tool for many of us who work on and around the land and other occupational uses in Queensland. And they're a valid thing that we require, and frankly Queensland is out of line by not having this in place in consideration of where it is in place in the rest of Australia. And indeed that is much the point of having things like a national firearms agreement, where the states should be aligned in their approach to various issues around firearms. Some of that's bad in terms of, that'll imply some additional restrictions, etc. But some of it's good, because the reality is we need to be aligned so that it's a fair thing across the board, as opposed to being these little stovepipes of different laws and different situations in each state, which is where we're at currently. Anyway, thank you for watching the update. As I indicated earlier, I'll be conducting another update in the not too distant future. Watch this space. There will be some other information coming out from some other sources. It's obviously, I'm here talking about it as a Shooters Union representative. We are by no means the only organisation who is heavily invested in making this occur, and we have a number of friends in the right places who will be pushing this issue forward because of the same concerns that they have around ensuring that their members are able to comply with workplace health and safety legislation, which is being more and more heavily directed by government, but essentially providing direction to do it, but not giving you the tools to facilitate that, which again, make sense. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, etc., feel free to place them in. I note that some of what I've said around the legal action and the further information campaign is a bit vague. That's deliberate. It is what it is. You'll see the information come out in the not too distant future, but rest assured there is no intent to slow down, go away, or not continue with this issue until we get a resolution on it, which ultimately we'll get there. It's a time frame question, as with all of these things. Cheers.